Welcome to Flying Upstream, the podcast where we uncover the choices, practices, and wisdom that defy mainstream conventions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Luisa, and together we're here to illuminate the alternative paths that have shaped human experiences through the ages. In each episode, we'll examine ways to move beyond societal norms. We're passionate about how timeless wisdom and unique lifestyle choices can foster healthier, sustainable, and enriching lives.
Join us as we navigate, challenge, and celebrate the beauty and insight of walking the road less traveled. If you've ever felt like you're flying north for the winter while everyone else is flying south, you found your flock.
Welcome back, free spirits. Today on the Flying Upstream podcast, we're diving into a topic that's redefining the way we think about food and wellness, veganism. And today we have a special treat. We're turning the spotlight on my amazing co-host, Kristyn Medeiros, a passionate vegan lifestyle enthusiast and Reiki practitioner. Kristyn, welcome to the hot seat.
Thanks, Luisa. I'm thrilled to be here today and ready to chat about veganism and all the benefits that it offers.
Awesome. I am so excited because veganism can seem like a really big step for a lot of people. But before we dig deep, I want you to break down for us the basics. What can you explain about what it truly means to be vegan?
At its core, veganism is all about avoiding animal products. And this includes things like meat, poultry, fish, dairy, eggs, and honey. So vegans avoid these foods because we believe in kindness to animals. And by us eating or using animal products, it's not being very kind to them because they're having to give their life just for us when it's not really necessary for our survival. So it's really about a commitment to cruelty-free and a sustainable way of living.
Thank you for that clear explanation because I think that gets clouded sometimes as to what veganism means. Now, let's talk about your transition to veganism. I know that you weren't always vegan. What prompted you to make the change, and what was that journey like for you?
I had just actually transitioned to being gluten-free, and that was something that was out of necessity. I was sick all the time and I didn't know why. And I finally went online, did some research, and decided to try being gluten-free to see if it helped. And thankfully, it did. Although it felt like an extreme transition to me to have to give up almost all bread, pasta, pizza. At the time, there weren't that many places offering gluten-free options, and it was in some ways traumatic for me. So, having just been through that experience, I was, as I had done most nights, sitting on the couch with my husband, watching a movie or something on TV while we ate dinner. And we happened to be watching the documentary called Forks Over Knives. And I didn't realize that it was all about being vegan. I thought it was just about being healthy, whatever healthy means. So we were watching it, and they're talking about all the health benefits of being vegan and all the tremendous harm that eating animal products does to your body. And at the time we were sitting there eating a chicken dinner, I literally put my plate down. I looked at it like in complete disgust and I said, I'm done. It was like that for me. It was that fast because I just couldn't believe that there's so much harm that comes from eating animals. I wasn't taught that. I was taught that that's where you get your protein is from chicken, from red meat, from fish, and it's really important part of your diet. When in reality, everything that we had been taught was actually completely false and all marketing for the dairy industry and the meat industry. It was so eye-opening for me. And I realized that I could never go back. I could never unlearn what I had just learned. And so over the next weeks and months or so, I continued to do some research and continued to dig into it to make sure what I had learned was really true. And everything I read supported it. So it wasn't a question of should I go vegan or not. The question was, how do I make this work? Having just gone through the experience of cutting out products with gluten, I already knew how difficult it was to change your diet. And it wasn't something that I took lightly. It was a big deal for me. And so I made a deal with my husband because I knew I was going to need some support in this. I told him, let's try it for a month and then let's see how it is. And if we hate it, we'll go back. Or if you hate it, you can go back to eating meat and I'll maybe stick with it or not. We'll see. But we agreed just to try it for 1 month. And we did. We really stuck to it. I think I was pretty committed. Like I said, it was more just how do I make this work, not only at home, but also when I'm out with friends. I was working in an apartment building in downtown San Francisco, and the culture is that you go out for lunch almost every day. You go out for coffee, you go out for donuts. And so it was a huge shift for me socially too. With all of that said, at the end of the month, my husband and I looked at each other and we both said, we really don't miss meat at all. We were
That's awesome.
we were stunned. We were so surprised. We really thought that we would be craving hamburgers and barbecue ribs and all these things that we're taught to associate with summer, like barbecuing food or a good hearty meal is like a good roasted chicken. And we were just like, we don't miss it at all. So it wasn't too bad overall. Like I said, it wasn't, do I go vegan? It was, how do I make this work?
You mentioned something that I think is really important to touch on because I think there's two ways that this could have gone for you, like for most of us. You had just gone through transitioning from going gluten-free, which I know is really hard just by reading labels. But do you feel that helped, or do you feel like it made it more difficult in your transition to veganism?
In some ways it helped, and some ways it hurt a little bit. It's like having your second child. You've already had one, so you know what the experience is going to be like for the most part, but you also know how difficult it is. So that's what it felt like to me. It was nice to already have had an experience changing my diet, but it's also hard. And I already knew that socially, there are a lot of challenges that come along with it, whether it's finding options when you're out at restaurants, whether it's explaining to friends why you're making this decision and having that conversation, or even just feeling self-conscious about ordering certain adjustments to meals in restaurants. There's a lot that goes along with it, and it does take some backbone to stand up for yourself and say, no, I want the salad without feta or whatever you want. Is a little bit more to it.
As you share the difficulties that we may encounter going vegan, they're very real. You mentioned working in an office. That's not uncommon. I would love for you to share whatever you think may be helpful with regards to how to navigate that or how you navigated that in your own transition, because I think that's one of the hardest aspects of it for a lot of us.
It is definitely. I have a couple recommendations. One is to find somebody else in your office, if you can, that is where you are. Either somebody that is already vegan and buddy up with them, ask them for recommendations, or even someone who's vegetarian. They might have some good recommendations of vegetarian places. And once you find something vegetarian, it's not a huge step usually to try to get to vegan. And then there's also certain cuisines that naturally lend themselves to vegan options a little more than others. Like Thai food, I usually have pretty easy time finding things there. Mexican food, you can just omit the cheese and meat on most things and still be able to order with a group without too much of a hassle. So there are some things that are pretty easy right off the bat. I'd also recommend doing a little bit of research. So if you know that you have a favorite coffee shop you always go to with your coworkers, see if they offer dairy alternatives. So if you get your latte with whole milk, maybe they have an option for oat milk, soy milk, almond milk, The list goes on and on. There's so many different plant milks out there. It's likely they have some alternative, but try to do a little research on your own time to see what the options are so that when you do show up to the restaurant or coffee shop, you already know what the options are that are available to you, and you don't have to make a big scene in the moment, because I think that's the part that can get a little bit embarrassing, is calling attention to yourself. So if you do your research ahead of time, then you can just avoid that part altogether.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about that commitment to cruelty-free living. It extends beyond diet, right?
It does. It absolutely does. And it's interesting because my journey was that it really started for my health. That was my number one reason why I went vegan. So although I started my vegan journey purely for health reasons, as I had my first child and she is obviously growing up vegan and she started asking questions about it, I found that it was a lot easier to explain to her why we're vegan by using animals and sustainability, the broader lifestyle of being vegan. It's harder to say to a 3-year-old, well, we're vegan because it reduces our chances of cancer. It doesn't really resonate. And I say this because it's really in the last 6 or 7 years that I've become more aware and passionate about the environmental side of being vegan. And veganism obviously extends and encompasses all of the ethical considerations that are part of it, and really rejecting the idea that we need animals for food, for clothing, or other purposes. It's a more holistic approach that emphasizes respect for all living beings and promotes that environmental sustainability by reducing the demand for animal agriculture. It's a nice way to complete the picture, because if we're not eating animals for our health, there's so many other benefits to it that you can't ignore it. It's not just one.
In contrast, Kristen, a meat eater's lifestyle centers around consuming animal products as part of their regular diet, correct?
Exactly, Luisa. So meat eater typically includes animal-derived foods like meat, poultry, fish, dairy, and eggs in their meal. So this dietary choice aligns with cultural practices, dietary preferences, and nutritional beliefs. And I say beliefs because they are not all true. And those prioritize animal protein sources. So the interesting thing here is that the meat that is most commonly consumed by meat eaters, which is chicken, red meat, and fish, none of those animals actually eat other animals for their own protein sources. So we are eating animals and being told that we need to eat animals to build protein, but the animals that we're eating are all vegan, essentially. So it really makes no sense. So yes, a meat eater does eat animal products for protein because that is their belief. But I want to throw this in because anyone who's listening, who's vegan curious out there, please question everything that you hear. It's so much of it is marketing and it just doesn't actually hold any water.
Thank you for clarifying those distinctions. I think it's very evident that veganism embodies a profound commitment to compassion and sustainability, both in the dietary choices and everyday living practices.
Absolutely. It's not just a diet, it's really a conscious lifestyle choice that extends to every aspects of our lives. So it's not just promoting kindness towards animals and a healthier planet, but it's also every choice you're making during the day, from what you're buying at the supermarket, what milk you're getting in your coffee, the food and lunch I pack for my children, what I'm eating, and it's the clothes I'm buying. It's really everything. And I would also say that you can definitely take being vegan to an extreme, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. There's also a way that you can be vegan and ease into it. We're talking today about my experience, which is that I've been vegan for a long time now. But when you're starting out, it really is a journey. It really is about getting to a vegan state, a vegan lifestyle in a way that makes sense for you.
And I love that you're sharing that because from my own experience, I know that a lot of us associate being vegan with having this strict dietary restrictions and a limiting culinary enjoyment. But as you mentioned, there is more to it than just what we eat, just what's on our plate. Is there anything else about a vegan lifestyle that you experienced and you'd like everyone to know?
Oh, definitely. And by the way, I hear that a lot. There's always a focus on what you're cutting out and what you can no longer eat. But the truth is that being vegan offers a vibrant and diverse array of food. It really is all about opening doors, not closing doors. You can think of it this way. You've lived your whole life eating meat and dairy. And now you get to think about what it might be like to try something different, to open a new door, make different food, try new things. And there's a whole slew of recipes out there, but there's ways you can think about it when you're thinking about transitioning. There's either plant-based meat alternatives, which are products like Beyond Burger and Impossible Burgers. Essentially, it's just plants and some chemicals made to taste and look like meat. And then there's also food out there that is also made from vegetables, less chemicals, but it's not meant to look like meat. It's not meant to imitate. It's meant to be a completely new dish, a completely new flavor that can excite your palate. So there's definitely ways to pursue it. And really, there's something for everyone when you think of it that way. Oh, and by the way, free spirits, I'm excited to share some of my favorite vegan recipes with you all. So make sure to follow Flying Upstream podcast on your favorite platform. Leave us a review and check out our YouTube channel for behind the scenes clips and more vegan lifestyle tips.
You're far in your experience now. You've been vegan for some time now, and you share that it's about trying new things. Can you share with us in your own experience, more towards the beginning, how did you go about that? And I'm interested in the mental component of it. How did you talk yourself through that in those moments?
In the early days for me, it was about finding some go-to recipes that were really easy. When the day is done, you're tired, you just want food, and everybody has a couple go-to that are easy enough. And it was really about replacing those go-to recipes with new vegan ones. I tried a lot of recipes out there and I discovered that I don't really like cooking. I know. There's my big
Hey.
confession. You heard it here first. I don't really love it. It doesn't bring me a lot of joy. It's not therapeutic to me, but that's okay. I know that about myself. And so when I'm finding recipes, I know that I won't make it unless it's really simple and it's made with mostly common ingredients. The recipes that require special ingredients that you can only find in some store on the other side of town or order it out. Those are not for me. Those are just not for me. So I know that about myself. So when I was finding these replacement recipes, I tried a lot and it took a while for me to find it because I had specific criteria, which is that they need to be easy to make, has to take me less than half an hour. And I didn't want too many ingredients or I don't want 16 different spices. I just want it to be a little bit more simple. I think part of it was knowing the way that I like to cook or what I can tolerate, and then seeking that out in those recipes. And then over time, I did start to assemble my go-to recipes. And I still make a lot of those recipes today for myself and my family. And that really helps me stay on track because then it doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like work to me because I know that I've now made these 100 times. They're really simple and I don't need any unique ingredients that I can also bring ingredients or bring this with me when I travel. I know I can almost certainly find what I need. That was my strategy going into it. And then once I got comfortable with my go-to recipes, then I started to get a little bit more adventurous and creative for holidays like Thanksgiving. Our first vegan Thanksgiving was really interesting. I had no idea what to make for a vegan Thanksgiving. No clue. I thought it was going to be just a bunch of sides and it didn't sound appealing to me and it sounded strange and I felt very awkward and self-conscious about it. But I did my best. I tried it. And some of my dishes were great and some of them were not great. And I never made them again. But it was about trying something new and having some compassion for myself. My family's definitely had a lot of dishes that were not very good, but that's okay. That's learning, that's growing, and that's life.
I love that you share that because compassion is a big theme when we are growing. And the objective is to always be growing, right? To always be expanding ourselves because that's how we become better. That's how we learn more of ourselves. That's how we expand at soul level too. That philosophy of compassion for all living things and having compassion also means being able to understand why other people go vegan, being accepting of the people around us that choose to go vegan.
There are tons of people out there that have really good advice for it. I have my own blog where I have lots of practical advice because I've been through all of it. I've traveled, have two kids that are vegan, and my own transitions. I've had to come up with a lot of my own solutions too. So check out my blog for more on that.
That's wise advice, Kristen. It sounds like it's about progress, not perfection. It's really important to be a part of a community. And I know firsthand because I'm part of your community. For our listeners, it's important to remember to check out Kristen's website, www.kristynmedeiros.com, and follow her on Instagram as well at Kristyn Medeiros for tips and inspiration on incorporating veganism into your daily life.
I welcome the community. I love talking to people who are starting their journey or even in the middle of it, and how we can embrace the mindful eating and compassionate living together. I really do believe that it happens one plant-based meal at a time. All right, free spirits, that's all the time we have for today on Flying Upstream.
We hope this episode sparked your curiosity and ignited a desire to explore the extraordinary paths less traveled.
Even when the current feels strong, a whole world of possibilities awaits.
We'll see you next time on the other side of mainstream.
So keep questioning, keep challenging, and most importantly, keep flying upstream.